You're good.
Okay. All right, welcome to the Board of Education Annual Truth in Taxation and Budget Hearing Meeting. And I would like to call this meeting to order at 6:46. And we'll start with a roll call. We have all members present tonight on Zoom. And this is an annual hearing that we hold, and we'll explain it here in a minute. But our only item on the agenda for this hearing is the Truth in Taxation and Budget hearing. So that will be our one and only item on this agenda, and then we will move into our regular meeting, which will begin at 7. So there might be a short break in between these two things, but I'm going to turn it over to that item. I'm going to turn it over to Matt McDaniel, who is going to take us through the Truth in Taxation and Budget hearing. Matt.
Thank you, President Bull. Good evening, everybody. Excuse me. Let me start by sharing my screen here. Oh, looks like that's disabled right now.
Got it?
All right, so
Okay.
This is the 2020-2021 Truth in Taxation hearing. We'll dive right in. Looking at 2020 taxable values, you'll see overall that there was a 4.9% increase over 2019 levels. We do see some trends with this data. For example, the industrial personal property continues to decrease. This decreased last year as well due to some tax exemptions that businesses are able to take advantage of. And then we'll look at taxable values by municipality. You'll see again the 4.9% increase. Most of these municipalities, their taxable values increase, anywhere from 2 to 5%. The big change, and much like we talked about last year, was Orion Township. And I believe that is related to some of the upgrades that General Motors has made at Orion Assembly. The 6 mills on commercial personal property and the 18 mills on other non-homestead property, that is the local portion of state aid revenue that we get. You'll remember from previous presentations that the state calculates our state aid payments as if we were levying these millage rates. If we don't, we just lose out on that taxable value. So it will be levied half and half, so 50% in summer, 50% in winter. It is subject to the heavy rollback. So you'll see that the authorized millage is 18.7361 mils. That gets reduced every year. And for example, this year, the millage reduction fraction was 0.9929 mils for the millage that expires in December 31st, 2024. The state pays the balance of the foundation allowance in 11 equal monthly payments, beginning with the October state aid payment. For extra voted millage, we do have the sinking fund that was new this year, that was approved by voters in November. It's levied on all classes of property, and it's also subject to the heavy rollback provisions. So voters will remember that they approved a 1.5 mil sinking fund. Because this millage could have been levied in the winter of 2020, it is subject to rollback, so it is 1.4874. We also have some debt retirement. We have retired all of the older debt, so we just have the 2016 building and site bonds. There's Series 1 that was issued in 2016 and Series 2 that was issued in 2019. 2.8 mils for Series 1 and 0.68 mils for Series 2. Historically, you'll see that this was the first year that there was a sinking fund. You'll see in 2013 tax year that the millage rates were 6.7 mils, excuse me, and it reduced but hovered around 6 mils for quite a while. As we retired some debt in 2019, the millage rate was reduced to 5.3. And for the current year, 2020 tax year, you'll see that the debt millage rate is 3.48 and the sinking fund 1.4874 for a total of 4.9674 mils. So what does this do to our property tax revenue? You'll see that general operations increase almost $1 million, pretty close, 925,000. This is related to higher taxable values on non-homestead properties. You'll see a reduction in the debt retirement of almost 7.8 million. This is because we've extinguished all that debt except for the 2016 bond that was still being paid down and will be for the next 27, 30 years. And then the first year of the sinking fund, that's estimated at almost $8.2 million. And I will turn it over to President Bull, see if we have any public comments.
Great. Any questions or comments from the board, or any comments from administrators, or any questions from anyone listening in? It's pretty straightforward. All right. With that, I think we'll close the Truth in Taxation and Budget hearing, and I'll call for a motion to adjourn this hearing at 6:52 p.m. Moved by Michelle, seconded by Barb.
I'm sorry, Kristen, we still have to talk about the budget.
Yeah.
Oh, whoops. Well, yes, I do have to. We do have to talk about the budget. Thank you for interrupting me. I appreciate it. Yes. Next up, after the Truth in Taxation part of the hearing, would be the budget hearing.
Yep, so now we're looking at the 2021 budget. You'll see our guidelines that we always follow in the budget development process, but that has been changed a little bit with the impact of COVID-19. We always work to a budget that's balanced, that's equitable. We want it to be sustainable, to promote growth, minimize any impact on student programs, team-based, and promotes transparency and openness. But COVID-19 is really, am I still sharing? I'm not. Thank you. There we go. So again, balanced and equitable spending plan, sustainable, promotes growth, minimizes any impact on student programs, team-based, and promotes transparency and openness. With COVID-19, there is a much greater emphasis on immediate reduction of available resources, not knowing what's going to happen to state aid. An emphasis because of that reduction on state aid, or potential reduction in state aid, to maximize any operational efficiencies, prioritize highly effective programs, and use fund balance if needed responsibly and judiciously, excuse me. So there are some requirements. This budget has to be adopted by June 30th in accordance with Michigan law. Again, this budget is a series of assumptions. There's not a lot of information as far as what state aid looks like next year, or even what our instructional model looks like next year. So this budget, it can change, it will change. We'll react accordingly. But we have approached this particular budget conceptually so that we can execute it if absolutely necessary. So here is the budget. You'll see that revenue hasn't changed from what was presented at the work session. The restoration of local revenue, assuming that our pre-K, our SAC, all of those programs will return to normal. A reduction of state aid of almost $10 million, an estimated cut in foundation allowance of $500 per student, some other changes with special education reimbursement, as well as some federal revenue changes due to carryover and not having or not expecting any CARES money to remain. What's a little bit more challenging is the expenditure piece and how we align that budget with our revenues. We took this from a very conceptual approach, as I said before. Using a puzzle as an analogy, in past years, typically there's just a few pieces that we're waiting on. Student count, what our state aid increase is going to be. We don't know most of those things with this budget. So we kind of have maybe the outer edges of the puzzle put together, and there's still a lot in the middle that needs to be determined and worked on. And as more information becomes available, and as the state acts and we continue to receive guidance on what our instructional model will look like, we'll be able to continue to redefine this budget, and we'll make any necessary amendments quickly. So to look at the budget just from a total revenue and total expenditures, you'll see that the 2021 revenue down 8.3 million, reducing those expenditures as well as by 6.7 million, and using almost $1.7 million of fund balance. Here is the general fund budget history. You'll see that in 2012, revenue was under expenditures by quite a bit. That reversed course. 2015, we started adding to fund balance and continued to add to fund balance until 2020, when that budget that will be adopted at the board meeting shows a loss or a use of fund balance of about $66,000. And then the budget that we're looking at right now, $1.7 million use of fund balance. As far as what general fund balance is as a percentage of expenditures, you'll see that it does dip related to the changes in 2020 and the 2021 school year, but that still hovers around that 20% of expenditures. These other budgets we talked about in detail at the work session in May. No changes to these budgets from what was presented at that time. You'll see that debt service, as we talked about with the truth and taxation, a use of fund balance there, just aligning that to the debt retirement obligations that we have. Capital projects, again, we're nearing the end of the bond work and continue to use fund balance. And then the first year of the sinking fund. You also see the special revenue funds carrying steps again, needing a transfer from the general fund to break even. Bookstore, food service fund, and student school activity fund. Those all assume a return to normal operations, and you'll see that there is some use of fund balance for bookstore and food service fund. Food service fund is required so that we comply with USDA regulations. And I'll turn it back over to President Bull.
Okay, now I won't screw this up. Are there any questions or comments about the budget as presented in the hearing? We will actually, in our regular meeting, we will be approving the budget, so we'll have time to discuss and ask questions then as well. All right, seeing none, we can now officially close the hearing and call for an adjournment. Moved by Michelle, seconded by Barb. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None. That is a 7-0 vote. And so what we will do is we will leave this Zoom room and join the other Zoom room, and just know that there could be other participants there when we join, and then we'll be queued to go live. So see you all in a few minutes.